Hi everyone, it's Katie here from Midnight Music, and I'm going to talk tonight about 19 ways to use the iPad in the music classroom when you've just got a single iPad. So 19 ways to use a single iPad in the music classroom. I'm hoping I'll have a few people join me live tonight. I'm not sure how many. It's about 8 o'clock. Well, it is 8 o'clock here where I am in Melbourne. And I know it's quite early for people who are in the States, but hopefully there'll be a few Aussies on with me tonight. So we're just heading into we've just finished up our last day of winter here and heading into spring tomorrow. So hoping that our nice weather continues. We've had a really beautiful day here in Melbourne today. Kind of like spring came a little bit early. So hoping to get some more beautiful weather in the next few days as well. I've got a couple of people I can see have joined us. If you've got a chance to just comment, let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to know who's online with me at the moment. Maybe you're sitting half watching the TV while you've got this on in the background too. That's what I often do. There's not a lot on TV at the moment. I think, I'm not sure what my kids are watching at the moment, The Bachelor or something exciting like that on TV. So let me know where you're from. There's a little bit of delay between when you actually comment and when I see it. So if you type something in, I'll hopefully see it pop up shortly. So today's session is going to be about 19 ways to use a single iPad. So it's one for those of you with limited resources, although all the things I'm going to share with you tonight can actually be used with multiple iPads too. You can do the same sorts of things even if you've got multiple devices as well. Hello Mia, and Jane's liked the video earlier. I'm not sure if she's on live with us at the moment, but Mia's on from South Africa. Excellent. What time is it there for you, Mia? I'm not up with South African time zone conversion. I'm kind of aware of what time it is in the States, but not so much with South Africa. Have a few friends from South Africa, hoping to get there someday and do some travelling over there. That would be really nice. And Debbie's from Canberra. Excellent. Nice to see you, Debbie. Thanks for joining live. I'm going to get started with the 19 tips. I've got 19 altogether to get through, so it might take a little while, and I've got these all written down for you. So yeah, if you don't want to make notes as we're going, that's absolutely fine. And I will give you a link towards the end of the session about where you can download the list of things that I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going to mention quite a few apps along the way, so don't worry too much about writing those down either. They'll all be in a downloadable handout, which you can get at the end. Mia's at 12 o'clock midday. Oh, that's a good time. This is a good time for you then. That's great. Excellent. Oh, and Tori's back on. Tori's been on a couple this week already, I think. 2 out of 3 or 4. I can't even remember how many I've done now. It's been quite a few. I'm going to do one more tomorrow morning my time, which will be 8 p.m. in New York, so New York time. And that final one for this week will be just a general surviving technology tips session. Hello, Belinda. I know Belinda's in Queensland, so nice and warm up there, I'm sure, where you are. Excellent. I'm going to get started. If you've got questions during the session, feel free to type them into the comments there. I'll pause every now and again. I won't sort of answer them all the time as we go. I'll pause every now and again and just check and make sure that everyone's okay and catch up on the questions at that point. Thanks, Tori. Yeah, Tori's watched all 3. Good. Glad you're enjoying it. Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing these more regularly. I'm trying to work out whether I should pick a regular time and, do them at the same time each week or maybe vary it around a little bit. I'm not really sure. It's difficult to commit fully to the same time each week because then I'm tied into that as well and I need a bit of flexibility. So we'll see how we go. All right, so the first out of 19 ways to use a single iPad in the music classroom is to practice note names. You can do a lot of drilling of note names with your iPad, just a single iPad, and all of these ideas really require you to attach your iPad to the data projector so that students can all see the screen at once. So you can do that in a couple of ways, and actually I wasn't planning on running through this tonight, but I should just mention you can either connect your iPad to a data projector wirelessly, so through Apple TV or one of those other wireless options, or you can hardwire it in, so you can connect with an adapter and the VGA cable or HDMI cable. Now, I'm just going to actually mention that I prefer to be hardwired into the data projector, and that's mainly because when you connect wirelessly, there is a little bit of a delay called latency between what you do on the iPad screen and what the students will see and hear and what you will see and hear on the data projector and through the speakers. And because of that latency issue, a lot of music apps don't work so well projected wirelessly. I don't like it at all. So, for instance, if you were showing a rhythm app and you need to tap in time to a metronome beat, or if you're recording something in the GarageBand app and you need to do it in time to a metronome beat, you're going to have a lot of issues doing it in that wireless setup. So I prefer for that reason to be hardwired into, whichever system you've got, HDMI or VGA. That's just a prior tip to all of these other things I'm going to mention. It's really worth talking about that, I think, because I see lots of teachers saying, why is it so bad when I connect my iPad up through Apple TV and I've got these delay issues. So that's the reason I don't love using that so much. However, having said that, it's fine if you're just showing a YouTube video or something like that where you don't need to be musical with your iPad. Totally fine to do it in that scenario. So practicing note names, you can bring up a note naming app and use that as a group. So instead of just having, one device per student where they're all going to do it, for themselves, you could do it as a group or in teams. So your students might be in teams instead. So note naming apps that I really like for this purpose are Staff Wars. That's one of my favourite ones. And basically you can show that on the screen. You can do this in a number of ways where maybe students are taking turns to actually come up and use the iPad. The rest of the students that are sitting or sitting in the room and not physically involved with the iPad can also be naming the notes as you go, either by maybe they're calling them out as a group or you get them to write them down in a list as you go along. Now, Staff Wars is one option. Staff Wars has two versions. There's the original version where you tap a note name on the screen to identify it, and it's got a space Star Wars kind of theme, which is really cool. They actually have a Staff Wars live version as well where you can play an instrument and the instrument gets picked up through the microphone and identified in that way. And I've actually done this with a group of teachers, and instead of playing an instrument, we've actually sung the notes in solfa. And it's worked really well. So this is a great way as a group to use it if you've just got that one single iPad. The group does need to be near to the iPad so that the iPad microphone picks up what you're doing, but works really well. So I just picked a nice key that worked well, a nice note range. I did something like D just above middle C, and one octave above that. So that was the note range I chose to set up, and with G as the tonic. And it worked really quite well singing in solfa. So give that a go if you've got the chance. A couple of other note naming apps. Flashnote Derby is a great one, especially for younger students. It's got like a horse racing theme, which is kind of cool. And there's another one called Noteworks as well, and that one's kind of bizarre. It's got this agricultural sort of theme. I'm not really sure the thinking behind it, but it kind of works okay too. So that's one option. Staff Wars, yep, I've mentioned that. I'm just checking my list here. Another thing that you can do with a single iPad is to practice sight reading rhythms. So there are a number of rhythm reading apps which you can use and display something on the data projector, and then get the students to all clap along or tap along or play some sort of percussion instrument along with the app. So you will need somebody operating the iPad to actually play the rhythm, but the rest of the class can be doing it just by watching what's going on the screen. So options for that include apps like Rhythm Cat, that one's quite a good one, or Rhythm Lab. And there's a new one which I'm going to mention. Now, this is kind of a little bit bizarre and totally different to any other music reading app you've ever seen, rhythm reading app. This is one that was mentioned to me recently by another music teacher who's in the States, Richard McCready, and he messaged me and one other music teacher, and she's also in the States too, and shared with us a rhythm reading app called Jazz Smash. And it's totally different to anything else. You don't actually see rhythms on the screen. You get objects flying across the screen at certain intervals, which are in time to the beat, in time to, say, a 4/4 bar. Very difficult to explain, I've just realised, without actually showing you visibly. But there's an area where you basically tap. You've actually got like a baton, like a baseball bat, which you hit the objects with, and they come flying through, and you need to tap them at the time that they reach the middle of this, sort of where the baton area is. Really, it's really cool and really interesting and really different. And you end up kind of anticipating when they're going to arrive at that point and you're going to tap in time. You end up creating some really cool rhythms. So the early levels are just sort of on the beat, and then it increases the rhythmic density as you go. So you'll end up playing sort of quavers and then offbeat quavers and more syncopated rhythms and so on. And it gets more complex the further on you get. Really good, totally worth checking out. I instantly paid to get rid of the ads, and I'm currently on level 82, and I think Richard was on level 180 last time I heard. So if you download it and give it a go, let me know what level you get up to. But I think also this could be projected, and you could give it a go as a class group and see if students can do it that way. So that's practicing sight reading rhythms. Using your iPad, your single iPad, as kind of a funky metronome is also a good thing. I did a session the other day about using a single laptop in the classroom, and some of these ideas are similar for laptops and for iPads, but using your iPad as a funky metronome is a great thing. So you can set up a drum pattern and get students to play along with the drum pattern instead of just a straight metronome click going back and forth. So on the iPad, something that's super simple to use for this purpose is just opening up the GarageBand app and using the smart drums. And you can basically set a tempo in your project and then set up a rhythm using the smart drums pad there. There's sort of the grid where you can drag sounds in. If you are not wanting to set up the pattern yourself, you can tap on the dice picture, which is at the bottom left of the screen, and it will just generate a pattern for you instantly. You can keep tapping that and it will change the rhythm as you go, which can keep the interest up. So that's great if you're wanting to use something to accompany maybe warm-ups, like choral warm-ups in the classroom, or if you're playing some sort of classroom ensembles and you want a bit of accompaniment with it. Fantastic just to generate a quick drum pattern in GarageBand. Other things I've used for this purpose, other apps include the DM1 app. That's a really great drum pattern generating app as well. It's a paid app. I can't remember quite how much it costs, but well worth the money. It's a fantastic sort of a drum sequencer app, and you can easily generate some fantastic patterns and really interesting rhythms and that sort of thing. The other one you can use, which is not an app, but a website that you can visit, which is called Groove Pizza. And I mentioned this in the previous session, so you could just open up your browser on your iPad and open up Groove Pizza and again set the tempo and generate a rhythm to use. So in the same vein, you could also create a backing track, a full backing track for your class to play along with, with classroom instruments or singing. And again, this can be really easy. If you use something like the GarageBand app, you could open up one of the smart instruments and create a backing really quickly, because the smart instruments basically require you to play chords. And so, for instance, you can open up the smart guitar, and on the screen you've got chord strips that you can play. Reminds me a little bit of the auto harps. My mum was a primary music teacher for many years, and she used to have an auto harp in the classroom. Recently in the music teachers Facebook group, I think someone found one in their back cupboard or something at the school they were about to start at. Great, useful instruments. You can press, for the real live auto harp, you can press a button or something that holds down certain strings and then play a chord really easily. And this is what the smart instruments in GarageBand remind me of too. So again, so you can bring up one of those smart instruments, you've got chord strips on the screen, you could really easily set a tempo and record a quick chord pattern using these smart instruments. Each of the smart instruments, and there are the smart guitar, there's the smart keyboard, and there are the smart strings in terms of the melodic options. And each of those has a little autoplay dial, and you can turn that to generate some kind of pattern. So for the example of the guitar one, you can turn the dial and it will generate like a picking pattern or a strumming pattern that the guitar is playing, and you can just play your chords really easily and record something there. So you might put together maybe like a 12-bar blues backing, that could be a good idea, or a 3 or 4 chord pop song arrangement, and then students could play along with that with their classroom instruments. Another thing, I'm going to mention GarageBand quite a bit here because it's it's a standard app that pretty much everybody has, and it comes free on the iPads. So another thing you can do with GarageBand is use the GarageBand real drums, in inverted commas, the ones that are not the smart drums and not the drummer, but the other one, which is just called drums. You can open that up, and it's a really clear, nice to look at view of a drum set, and it's a fantastic way just to talk students through the parts of the drum kit. So you can really easily see the kick drum and the snare and the hi-hat and the toms and the crash cymbal. And this is really good if you don't have access to an actual drum kit on the day when you want to cover the drum kit in the class, then you could use GarageBand to do this and be able to see all the parts of the kit. Now, the benefit of the app also is that you can play each of the parts of the kit, and so students can hear the different types of sounds that make up the kit. You could talk about the three main parts that make up a rock pattern, for instance, being the kick and the snare and the hi-hat. You could easily get students to take turns coming up and playing that pattern, and the ones who are not playing on the iPad could actually do it with body percussion at the same time, so you get everybody involved. All right, number 6 is to teach the drum pattern. So teaching actually how to create a drum pattern using an app. And again, you could do this in the GarageBand app, but the one that I mentioned earlier is really good for this purpose, the one called DM1. And it's a drum sequencer app which allows you to create drum patterns really easily. There's like a grid, and each row is a separate part of the kit, so a separate drum set sound. And you can turn buttons on or off in a 16 semi-quaver pattern across the screen. So you can ask the kick drum, for instance, to play it on number 1 and number 5 and number 9. I'm trying to work out my numbers here for each beat of the bar. And then you can add a hi-hat part. And by showing students this on the data projector, you can explain how the 3 different patterns all combine to make the standard rock pattern, or whichever style pattern you want to talk about. So you can get them to play along as well. You could create a kick drum pattern and get the students to replicate that with body percussion or classroom instruments. You could get them to add the hi-hat part in. You could split them up into groups and do the same sort of performing thing as well. In a similar way, you can use an on-screen keyboard. So you could display an on-screen keyboard, bring something up on your iPad, and that will then show on the data projector for the whole class to see. And that can be really useful, just even if you're explaining things like intervals or chords and how they're structured, how they're made. You can bring that up and really easily show the whole class at once, rather than necessarily gathering around a keyboard or a piano that you might have in the room, but just bringing them up. So there's one called Virtuoso Piano. That's a good app that you can use. And that actually has, some people like this and some people don't, but that app has letter names that you can bring up on each note. It's the only one that I know that has letter names on each note of the piano. The only issue with that one I've found is that there are some adverts in the app, so it may not be suitable depending on the students that you're working with. So just double check that before you go showing it on the data projector. Excuse me. And GarageBand, of course, if you bring up the GarageBand keyboard instrument, you can see the notes there on the screen too, and again, really clearly. You can even ask GarageBand to show more or less notes on the screen, so you can have fewer notes or a broader range of notes. And you can even open up, in the GarageBand app, you can open up 2 keyboards on top of each other, kind of like if you were looking at an organ, where you've got sort of 2 hands, 2 places for 2 hands to play. You can do that in the GarageBand app too. So just useful as a reference point of view, I think. How's everyone going? Excellent. I'm just checking to see if there's any questions. Not so far. I'm just checking back. Oh, Tori's commented, you joined the one in the evening. Yeah, we're talking about times for these sessions. Yeah, it's good to vary the days. Belinda says vary the days and times. Yeah, I think so. Varying the days and times is good. I think often with music teachers, a lot of people have a rehearsal on Tuesday nights. So if I always pick Tuesday nights, that will count out the people who have rehearsals on Tuesdays or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think varying it will be a good thing for me too. Great. So let's talk about, we're up to number 8 out of 19. Let me just check what I was going to say here. I turned the page a little bit too quickly. Oh yeah, building an ostinato on the fly. So one of my favourite apps on the iPad is called Loopy, and it's been shown quite a few times on the Jimmy Fallon show, The Late Show in the States. Great app, and it's one where you can basically sing or play layers of music and keep adding parts over and over and over and over and over. It's really great. So you can basically lay down an initial track and then add another part over the top and another one over the top. So it's a really good one for showing ostinato and how ostinatos work. So something like The Lion Sleeps Tonight, you could sing, the bass line ostinato and sing that actually into the Loopy app. And it will, after you've completed that first round of singing it, it will just keep playing it over and over and over again. And then you can get students to sing over the top. So it's a great one to get students to build up their own layers and play the melody over the top. And as an extension to that, and this is number 9, is to use the Loopy app as an improvisation tool. So I've done this even with my own kids when they were quite young, where I've laid down even just percussive sort of sounds. Like I've laid down a beatboxing, really basic beatboxing rhythm. I'm not a great beatboxer, so I just put something basic down. And then once that first loop is established, that first layer, I just held out the microphone and, my kids took turns in coming up to the microphone and actually just recording their own part over the top, and they would just improvise something completely different, contrasting to what I had. So it was a great way to explore sound and explore rhythm and explore, using different vocal production techniques and so on. Lots and lots of fun. You could do it with instrumental music too. You could lay down some kind of bass line and then get students to play over the top using instruments, taking it in turns or even as a class group. So again, lots of fun. I've had, when my kids were doing it, they I recorded something on the first loop in the Loopy app. There's basically, when you look at the screen, kind of like 6 circles on the screen, and each one of those is a different recording track. And I did the first one, and then my kids came up and tapped the second one, and then recorded something on the second one, and then the other one would come up and tap the third one, record something on that, and so on. So they knew how to set it going and actually do the recording themselves. Couple of questions. Belinda's asking about age restrictions for the app. For Loopy, I don't know. Is there an age restriction for Loopy? I wasn't aware that there was, so maybe you're right. Maybe you can Google while I'm still talking and report back and have a look into it. I wouldn't have thought that there was an age restriction with that one. I tend to find that it's to do with the apps where you need to log in, and they are all definitely 13 and over, but I might be wrong. And it doesn't have any inbuilt ads either. That would be the other thing I would imagine would trigger there to be an age restriction involved. But yeah, it would be good to know if you get a chance, Belinda, while we're talking still. And welcome Adam and Amy. Nice to see you. Oh, MadPad does. Yeah, right. That might be because of the sharing aspect, I suspect. Maybe it's the sharing aspect, yeah. I know Belinda's a teacher here in Australia with me, and she's in Queensland, and they have a higher level of restrictions than some of the other states in Australia. So I'm guessing that's why you're asking. You've probably got, the schools are probably saying that you need to make doubly sure about that. I know a number of schools or teachers have come to me and said that the schools are being much more careful now with certain restrictions, and not at all schools, but just at some. So, yeah, definitely worth just checking the terms and conditions. Okay, MadPad, that's coming up shortly, so I'll mention it when I get back to that too. So, Loopy, that's one of my favourite ones, as I mentioned. Number 10 suggestion here is to use to do some pitch matching. And a great app for doing this with is called Singing Fingers. Now, Singing Fingers is a nice little app. It used to be free, but they've put a price on it now, but it's still only a couple of dollars or so. And Singing Fingers is essentially a white screen, and you can draw on the screen. But the catch is, and it's a good catch, the catch is that you have to make a sound for anything to appear, for any drawing to appear on the screen. So if you draw without making any sound, nothing will appear. And as soon as you sing or make some kind of talking sound, or even if there's background sound in the room and you draw, then something will appear on the screen. Now, that's not the only thing it does. Basically, there's colours associated with different pitches in the app, which really appeals to me. I've got a little obsession with colour. And what I found you can do is sing a single note, a single tone, and draw a straight line in the app. And depending on the note you sing, it will give you a certain colour on the screen. So, for instance, let's say I sing a note and it comes up purple, and then you can get the rest of the class to repeat your note, and you draw on the screen, and you can see if their note matches when you listen to it, but also visually, because if they sing the right note, it will be the same colour as the one that you sang originally. And this works with octaves as well. So if I had a male voice and I sang down an octave, as long as my students sang an octave higher or the same octave that I did, the same pitch exactly, then the colour will still be the same. And so it's really fascinating to just see the comparison with visuals and with sound as well. When you have drawn a line on the screen in Singing Fingers app, basically you can play back your drawing by running your finger along the line that you've drawn or the picture that you've drawn, and it will play back the sound. So you can even do a double check that the pitch is the same that the students produced to what you actually sang as well. Lots of fun. I love that app. Now, if you've just joined us, I have a list of everything I'm talking about today. I'll give you a link at the end of the session where all of the apps that I've mentioned and all of the ideas as well will be listed, and you can download a copy for yourself to take home if you want. To take home. Download to keep, I should say. Okay, so number 11, teaching form. You can use your iPad to teach form as well. And with this idea, I'm thinking back to GarageBand, where you can create a piece in, say, ternary form. You can perhaps put together a quick backing or a quick chord sequence in GarageBand in the first section of your app. So basically in the first part of your project. And if you record that, say you've got 8 bars or so recorded, then you can duplicate that section twice, so you end up with 3 of them. Go back to the middle one and actually change that one a little bit, or get the students to change it. So you're creating a B section. So the first one will be an A section, the second one will be a B section, that's the one where you varied it a little bit, and the last one again, which you haven't touched, will be an A section again. So you could talk to the students about, what makes the differences between the sections, and get them to do that as a group, or get someone in the class to come up and do it as an example. And then you can play the whole thing through actually and get them to identify orally when they hear the section change. So that can also be a good option. Now if you've got 3 sections in your song, in GarageBand there's a little song sections menu at the top right of the screen. There's a little plus sign and you tap on that and it will drop down with some options there. And this is the place where you can duplicate the current section that you're working in. And so you do that twice, and there's also an option to turn on all sections if you want to hear all of them in a row, one after the other. GarageBand by default is set up to only play the section that you're looking in at the same, at that time. And if you want to hear section A, B, A all in a row, like a big longer song, then you would go into that menu and just tap on all sections, and it will turn them all on and play them all without stopping. That's a commonly asked question that I get, is how can I hear the whole song through that I've put together in GarageBand, and that's the way you would do it. Another quick one with GarageBand, number 12, is to use your iPad to demonstrate tone, colour and timbre. Now this is a really easy thing you can do, is to open up the GarageBand keyboard, and this is the proper keyboard, not the smart keyboard. And basically once you've opened up that instrument, if you particularly go and change the playback sound to perhaps not grand piano but one of the synthesizer sounds, there are options on the right-hand side of the screen with knobs that you can turn to adjust things like the cutoff and the delay and the attack. And this can be a great way to make some changes, or get one student to come up and make some changes. And as a group you can talk about the sound of the original version and the sound of the new version that you've just created. So you could ask students to identify, is it harsh or mellow or smooth or bright or soft, and get them to get used to those words that are used to describe timbre. So that's a nice, really easy one to do. And there are so many keyboard options in GarageBand, so many different ones that you can bring up and adjust. Some of them have fewer adjustment options than others. So just keep looking until you find one that you think is going to work really well. Hello, Miranda. Miranda's just joined us too. I saw your little thumbs up. Thank you. Number 13, so 13 of our 19 ways to use a single iPad in the music classroom is to use your iPad as a score reading device. And this is one of the reasons actually that a lot of musicians buy an iPad in the first place, is to use it to read their scores in a digital way instead of having paper scores all the time. And there are, my favourite app for this purpose is called Fourscore. It's Forscore, so Fourscore. And you might just simply use this to display sheet music on the data projector for your students to read from instead of them having paper copies to read from. So really good for ensemble arrangements that you might be playing in class. It's not going to work for everything, but there are some simple arrangements that it would work really well for, and particularly if you're just singing as a group, maybe even one part or a couple of parts, and you can display that music on the screen for the students. The benefit of using the digital version, one of the benefits for me is that the page turns are super fast. So I could never turn pages with a physical paper copy as quickly as I can in the Fourscore app, because as soon as you see the page and you need to turn to the next page, you just do one tap on the screen and it flicks straight across. So I love that about this. The other thing that is a really good option within Fourscore is the ability to set up links between repeated sections. So at the end of, say, a first time bar, you can actually set up your score in Fourscore to go back. When you tap at the end of the first time bar, you can set it to go back to the place that you need to return to. And then as you go through the score the second time and you reach the beginning of the first time bar, you can put another little link spot there and tap, and it will send you to the second time bar this time round. You can do the same thing for coders. So it makes going back to repeats really easy, much easier than fiddling with, reams of paper and working out which page we're going back to and so on. Just taking a little time to set those things up is fantastic. The other thing you might, in addition to playing from the score, you might just use that sort of option for doing score reading as a class. So if you're doing a listening type exercise and you've got a recording on in the background, and as a class you're reading through the score together, that could be a great thing. In Fourscore you can even add annotations and highlights, or you can get students to do that. So while you're, reading along with the score, you could have highlighted sections or notes on to say that this is the beginning of A or the beginning of B or the recapitulation and so on. All right, so number 14 is to use your iPad, your single iPad, for some interactive listening activities. There's this free book. Now, to be honest, I haven't checked this today. I should have checked today whether it's still available. I get worried when, sometimes things disappear when I'm about to run a workshop or do a presentation. So hopefully it's still around. But there's a great free app called Explorium Sound Uncovered. And it's a bit like an interactive book, essentially. So you can open it up and it just gives you really interesting facts about sound, and also some interactive things that you can do, sort of activities or examples that you can listen to. It's got images and audio demonstrations. There's one, it's not going to be super accurate, but there's one about how good is your hearing. And there's a scale. You can basically play back a sound. It's generating a frequency, and you can start really low, which everybody can hear, and work your way up the scale, and get students to raise their hand when they don't hear a sound anymore. And there's a point at which it says that adults don't hear anymore, but kids still will. I can still hear that, thank goodness, so my hearing must be okay. But then there's a point at which no human will hear it and only dogs, kind of thing. So that's a really interesting one. But they've got lots of other kind of cool sound facts in this interactive book as well. And last time I checked, as I said, it was a free one, so it's a really good one to check out. All right, idea number 15 for using your single iPad is to use it as a listening post. So this is the sort of thing, works quite well as like a centre or a rotational activity. you could just have your iPad set up with some sort of music that you want the students to listen to, and maybe they're going to give you some feedback. Write in a listening journal, or do something like answer questions on a worksheet while they're listening. And this can be great. So you could have it so that the speakers are playing out loud to a group of students, or if you get one of these devices, I remember to grab it for show and tell. This is a Belkin Rockstar headphone adapter. So basically you plug that into this end here into the iPad, and then this part here allows you to plug in 5 sets of headphones. So if you want a group of 5 students to listen all on one iPad, that's a great option, just to get a couple of those or one of those if you've just got a single iPad, and use that. Tori's done the Googling for me, thank you. Sound Uncovered is still available and still free. Yay, good. I like it when people check stuff in during workshops. All right, so listening post, that was number 15. Number 16 is to create a sound effects board for a storytelling project. And Belinda was mentioning MadPad, the MadPad app a bit earlier. And MadPad is the one that I'm going to suggest for this. However, I do need to say, MadPad, which has been one of my favourite apps since it first came out years ago when the iPad was first around, it hasn't been updated for a while, and it's on the list of, I don't know if you're aware, but when iOS 11 comes out, there's a whole stack of apps which are not going to work anymore after iOS 11 gets released if the app developer has not updated them more recently. So just be warned that you may lose a few. You might not lose any, and it's no reason to panic or anything, but MadPad at the moment is one of those ones which is not being updated or has not been updated for a while. So I think it's maybe not going to work quite soon, even though it's one of my favourite ones. But if you can still use it, it's a great one. It's like a soundboard. There's basically 12 squares on the screen, and for each of those squares you can record a little snippet of video which has accompanying audio with it, and it's super cool. Really easy to use. You can get students to basically create some sort of sound effect. So we'll take a door slamming, for instance. You basically hold the iPad up and tap one of the squares, and it will video the student closing the door, and it will pick up the audio. And the clever thing about the app is that it clips off any dead space, dead sound at the beginning, any silence, so that when you play it back by tapping that square, the sound comes out instantaneously. So it's really good. So you can end up recording 12 different sounds on your MadPad screen, and then use that as a sound trigger board for a storytelling project. So my idea has been to get students to work in groups. So if you've just got your one single iPad, you could have a group sound effects board. Then the students are going to go away and write a story, put together something that uses those sound effects. And then you could have group performances at the end of class where they perform their story and use MadPad on your iPad to trigger the sound effects to go with the story that they're reading out. Really great, lots of fun. And just welcoming a couple of people. Oh, I'm just going to stop for a second. Belinda has looked at the fine print for the Loopy app and it's all good. Hooray, that's good. I'm very happy about that. Hi, Linda. Nice to see you. It's been ages. And Tom as well. And Mia's still here. I think I said hello to you, Mia, earlier, so welcome. Excellent. So MadPad, yeah, I'm crossing my fingers that it's going to stay around for a little bit longer. Anyway, I know a couple of my friends have written to the app developers to say, please, please, please don't let it die, but I think it's not top of their list at the moment. It's not one of their best-selling apps, so we may have to just let it go. All right, I've got three more ideas for using your single iPad. Number 17 is using it to discover the orchestra, or to talk a little bit more about the orchestra and show aspects of orchestral instruments. And there are lots of great apps that will allow you to do this, and I'll name just a few of my favourites here. So one of my favourite ones for this is it's actually called The Orchestra, and it's a fantastic app, super good quality. You can basically open the app up and it will play you part of a number of classical pieces. So there's Beethoven, there's Mozart, probably not just classical actually, there's probably some other styles in there too. But let's take the Beethoven for instance. You can see the orchestra playing Beethoven, you can see a video of all the players, you can see a really beautifully clear video of the conductor, so it's really good for talking about the role of the conductor. And you can even tap on like a map, those seating maps of the orchestra that you usually see. You can tap on that to emphasize different sections of the orchestra while it's playing. It's like turning, if you had a mixing desk and you turned the volume up of the strings or of the percussion, it's kind of like that in its effect. So really good for looking at, what the orchestra does and hearing different parts. Now, in addition to that, you can view a score of what they're playing, and you can see it in traditional notation and you can see it in graphic notation too. And the other part of it is that you can tap through a couple of menu options and actually see specific information about certain instruments. So if you brought up the bassoon, for instance, it'll have some written information there. You can watch a video of the player. I can't remember if the player talks in this one, or I might be thinking of a different website. Anyway, there's information about the instrument. You can see the instrument's range. You can actually hear the different notes in their range. So it's really good if you're doing orchestration stuff and you need to know what are the sound qualities of the bassoon in its lowest register versus its high register, and so on. So that one's beautiful app. It's a bit pricier than some of the others. I think I don't want to say the price in case I'm wrong. It may be around $15 or so. Someone can Google that while I'm talking as well. A couple of other orchestral ones which are really great. Carnival of the Animals. There is an app which is Carnival of the Animals, and that's quite beautiful. You see lots of different aspects of the piece and the instruments and so on. Here in Australia, we have, where I live in Melbourne, there's the MSO, Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and they've had a free app for a while which also shows you different instruments and how they work and so on. Not as fully featured as that first, the orchestra one, but it's a great free one to use. A couple for younger students. There's one by Naxos called My First Classical Music App, and there's another one which is free, which is called which is for the Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra. And both of those, again, especially if you're doing the Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, it's great to have that app just as an extra sort of thing to show students and to work through. That one's actually got a couple of games included in it, which you could do as a class group too. Now, number 18 and 19, my last two tips for using a single iPad in the classroom, they're kind of easy ones and they're not app-related really at all. But number 18 is to use the camera, which is one of the most used apps really on any of my devices, is to use it to just video record your students and what they're doing. So this could be performances, or it might just be, in-class groups that are working on projects. You might record their final version of something that they've just produced. Great to give instant feedback about performances. I find that, people who are learning instruments think that they might be holding the instrument correctly, and then when you show them a video of their playing, they're like, no, I'm not really holding the instrument correctly, and so it's easier to prove that to them. Great to use it for archival purposes or assessment purposes and so on. So just straight videoing is great. You can even use the audio aspect, so just even the voice memo app is a really good one to use just for capturing quick audio too. And the last one I'm going to mention, and this is one that a teacher mentioned to me in a workshop, and I thought, I can't believe I did not think of it myself, is to basically set your iPad up on a stand of some sort and point it to yourself. You're basically going to open up the camera app and point the camera at you and whatever you're playing. So the teacher that who told me about this was teaching students how to play the ukulele in class, and basically he set up his iPad on a stand and pointed the iPad camera at his hands playing, the ukulele and the chord positions on the ukulele, and basically had that attached to the data projector. So it ended up acting like, a camera where basically his image of his hands was projected right onto the screen, and all of the students can see everything there really clearly, rather than him having to sort of hold up his hand and, show them, and they're all crowding around or having trouble seeing what he's doing. So projecting your own image playing something is a really great way. You could do this even with xylophones or glockenspiels if students need to see, you visually doing it while they're playing along. Great way to just show what you're doing there. So that's it. That's my 19 ways to use an iPad, single iPad, in the music classroom. I hope you enjoyed that and found some of them useful and some of them are new to you. I have a link. Where is that link? Oh, I'm going to put it on the screen. I've got the technology. Here we go. So for a list of all the links of everything that I've mentioned today, basically if you go to midnightmusic.com.au/single iPad, it's going to take you to a blog post that I wrote about this, and that's where everything is listed there. From memory, I think you can download a copy of the list if you want to take a PDF with you, and so that's all there. So this Facebook Live session is one of multiple ones that I've been doing this week. I think this is I did one last week, maybe 2 last week. I think we're up to number 5 or 4 or something like that. And I've been doing them because I've had a special on for my online community. So if you're interested in more help after today and more in-depth help and professional development and training with PD certificates that you can get for your training, I've got a special on for my community, and I'll just put the link up there in case you're interested in reading more about what is involved with that. So that's there. That's midnightmusic.com.au/simple music tech. And I'm going to hang around just a couple more minutes. If anyone's got any questions at all, please feel free to type them into the comments, and I'll answer them if I can. Tomorrow morning, my time, I'm actually going to do another session, which is basically about just tips for surviving technology generally. So a few things that I've picked up over the years, which I now do religiously to make sure tech does not go wrong so much for me, or what to do when it does go wrong and you've got a group of people in front of you waiting for you to run a session. That's always so much fun. So I'm going to share those tips tomorrow morning, and it's, again, a chance for you to ask questions about anything if you like to as well. Erin, thank you. Erin, I've just read your comment. She's listening in the US while getting ready for school. Awesome. Oh, that's really great. Okay, cool. Tori's just said, I can't read your comment because there's a thing in the way. Hold on, just moving my text out of the way. The link for the last one doesn't work. I've tried a couple of times. Okay, cool. Right, all right. I will try and see if I can fix that one. I'm not sure why. Tori, just check, maybe also check your spam folder, junk folder. Occasionally I find the way I get the PDF to you, to your email inbox, the system that I use, occasionally I think school filters block it. It might even be worth, if you've got a different email address that you can try, which is not a school one, and I don't know if you've used a school one or not, but if you've got a non-school email address, I find when people do that it comes instantly. And I'm not sure what it is about the PDF delivery that the school systems don't like, and it's not everybody, but it's just occasionally. So maybe try that. Otherwise, you can send an email to support@midnightmusic.com.au if you have any problems after that, or message on the Facebook page. That's fine. I'll see that and try and follow it up for you. So all good. So hopefully some of you might be able to join me tomorrow for the next one. It's not tomorrow. If you're in the States, it's actually tonight for you guys, I think, if I've got my time zone conversion correct. So it'll be 8 p.m. on the 30th. No, what day is it? 31st of August. It's hard dealing with the time zones. 31st of August, 8 p.m. if you're in the States. That's the next one. Or if you're in Australia like me, it'll be 10 a.m. on the 1st of September. First day of spring for us. Hooray, hooray. Excellent. Thanks, everyone, for those of you who've stuck around to the end. And this recording will be available afterwards, of course, as well. So I'd love it if you've got friends, colleagues that you would like to share this with. Feel free to do that. You can tag them in the comments or just click the share button and share it on. That would be fabulous. Excellent. All right, I'm going to sign off now. Thanks, everyone. Great to see you.